Computers are coming your way.
Divorce is often one of the more traumatic experiences that a young child can go through, as many are left in a state of confusion and distress at such a tumultuous time in their life. And for a young man named Daniel Bartlam, his childhood was sadly no different. Growing up in Nottinghamshire, England, Daniel's parents, Jackie and Adrian, would separate following the birth of Daniel's younger brother, with the situation leading to a split in the family, as the young boys would move to a new home with their mother. This brought Daniel to an unfamiliar town, as well as a brand new school, and to top it all off, Daniel's mother would soon find a new partner, further adding to the confusion that Daniel must have been feeling. All of these circumstances would lead Daniel to a declining mental state, as he began to isolate himself in his room, barely speaking to his family. Daniel's mother, Jackie, was well aware of the change in his behavior, and she soon thought of the perfect way to bring him out of this depression. So she saved up some money on the side until she eventually had enough to buy Daniel his very own iMac, a computer that he had been asking for years. At the time, Daniel had a vested interest in technology, even having his own YouTube channel dedicated to the topic. But this new computer meant an upgrade in quality and a future with limitless possibilities. Overjoyed, Daniel quickly began a new channel and dedicated his very first upload to his new device.
Hello YouTube, this is Daniel AB1702 here, and it's finally happened. I now have an iMac, and I can now make bigger and better videos.
The video is clearly nothing too special, as the quality is about what you would expect from a kid his age who was just starting out. And the following videos were much the same, with these uploads simply being compilations from a show he liked. It all may not have seemed like much, but this computer, along with this new channel, seemed to be the spark that he so badly needed, a new passion and a new outlook on life. But strangely, after just a few uploads, the account would go silent. This is something that happens all the time on YouTube, where a creator starts posting with high aspirations before abandoning their work, and it's typically due to a lack of success or just the overall busyness of life. But in Daniel's case, his reason for leaving was far darker, as right around the time of his last upload, he would experience the ultimate tragedy. On the morning of April 25th, 2011, neighbors of Daniel had reported hearing a commotion coming from his home. That commotion would soon turn to chaos, as the house suddenly erupted into flames, with smoke billowing out all sides. Through the commotion, Daniel would emerge from the home with his little brother and dog in hand, but his mother was nowhere to be found. Police and fire units arrived at the scene quickly, but were already too late, as inside the home they would find the badly burned and disfigured body of Jackie. And surprisingly, they'd soon notice that it wasn't the fire that had done her in, but rather she had been brutally murdered with what appeared to be a hammer. The scene was shocking and incredibly chaotic, but luckily Daniel had been there to explain everything. According to the child, a masked burglar had entered the home before confronting his mother. The confrontation then led to the anonymous person attacking Jackie with a hammer, causing her to collapse to the floor. He then says the intruder lit her body on fire, leading Daniel to grab his brother and dog and escape from the blaze, saving what remained of his family as the murderer escaped out the back. Daniel's story stood out for several reasons, mainly because it showed Daniel was a hero for saving his brother and dog, and it showed just how traumatic that morning must have been for him, as in the matter of one day, Daniel had lost his home and his mother in probably the most devastating way imaginable. But his story also stood out for one other reason, with that reason being in regards to the killer. As police began their investigation, they searched and searched for any clues left behind from this supposed masked intruder, but they found nothing. No fingerprints, no footprints, no anything. And looking for any semblance of a lead, they started to search through Daniel's room, where through the charred remains, they miraculously found his computer in perfect working order. Authorities would search the child's device when they stumbled upon something rather bizarre. It was a story that Daniel had typed months before in a Word document that was set as the scene of a soap opera that he had been writing. The story read, Daniel Bartlam, 1997 to 2047, the longest-serving male character to be on the show. The only place he couldn't get away with his deeds was with his mother, Jackie. So one evening, he made it look as though it was a break-in and murdered his mother with a hammer, and then set her and the family home alight, but helped his brother out to safety and got his neighbors to contact the police. The story ends with Daniel lying to the police and getting away with murder. It was a shocking revelation, as his mother had been killed with a hammer and set on fire through what Daniel had described as a break-in, just as his story was written. And to make it all stranger, further investigation would reveal that in the days prior to Jackie's death, Daniel had attempted to delete the document, though he had failed to fully remove it. And the findings went deeper, as countless screenshots and clips of a character from a show called Coronation Street were found on the hard drive, with it appearing as though Daniel had an obsession with this character, which proved to be rather interesting, as the character, John Stape, was a villain who had murdered another character with a claw hammer, the same weapon used on his mother. Investigators would keep digging until they eventually found the nail in the coffin, as it was revealed that in the days prior to the attack, Daniel had searched how to get away with murder. With the slew of information and the lack of evidence that a break-in had ever occurred, Daniel's story quickly fell apart, until he eventually admitted the gruesome truth that he had been the one who had taken his mother's life. On the 24th of April, Daniel would spend the night in his room rewatching one of his favorite Saw movies. He then emerged from the room carrying a claw hammer and approached his sleeping mother. He proceeded to strike her 7 times in the face before eventually setting her body on fire and escaping the home with his brother and dog, acting as the hero who had quote-unquote saved the day, when in reality it was all his doing. And the entire series of events had been plotted out on the very computer that his mother gave him, the same computer that he had so excitedly made this video on just months before the attack. To this day, we don't really know why Daniel chose to attack his mother, as any reason he's given has been fairly easily disproven, with many chalking it up to his tumultuous childhood, though we have learned more information about his early years, with many of these stories proving to be incredibly disturbing and hinting at the idea that Daniel was mentally unwell. For instance, it was said that he had an obsession with gruesome movies and games that seemed to inspire his own violent thoughts as he began watching these graphic films at the age of 8. He took these films as inspiration to start writing his own stories, which almost always ended in death and murder, and the details of which were said to be incredibly intense. And in a much darker example, about 6 weeks before the murder, during a normal day at school, Daniel began desperately yanking at his tie, insisting that it was trying to strangle him. When further asked about this, he then revealed that he was hearing voices, and those voices were telling him to hurt people. But surprisingly, after being given a psychiatric evaluation, the counselor told his mother that there was nothing wrong with Daniel. But to be on the safe side, they did offer counseling that Jackie would quickly deny, a decision that, for her, may have ultimately proven fatal. Whatever made Daniel snap that day, it was seemingly a long time coming. And despite his young age, he would be sentenced to life in prison, with a chance for parole coming in the distant future. But the truly tragic note here is about his mother, Jackie, as she bought her son that iMac that he so clearly loved, and she did so in the hopes that it would bring some much-needed happiness during such a tough time in his life. How could she have known that in reality, Daniel would turn around and use that very computer to plan and eventually carry out her very own murder?